Okay, so this panel has a very interesting title: "Are off-chain payments the future of crypto?" I don't like the term crypto very much, but since we are talking about a Bitcoin wallet and a Bitcoin-based service mostly, also digital gold and physical gold service, we can focus a little bit our terminology and our efforts. So the first thing that we'll ask you to do will be to introduce yourself and to introduce your project, generally speaking. So what are you working on? What does make your project different from other similar projects and so on? Even disregarding for a minute the off-chain question. So just, who are you? What do you do?
Sure. So I'm Dario from Moon Wallet, and we're focusing mainly in making it really easy for the users to actually use Bitcoin, making it really easy to do peer-to-peer payments, to store your money safely in a hard wallet and that kind of stuff, and focusing in the issue that several people were speaking earlier about key management. Like, it's a really tough thing to do correctly, and we want to help users to do it correctly, but at the same time, don't lose access to their Bitcoin. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
So the name of the wallet is Moon, like M-U-U-N, and it's very nice. Also, the user experience is very, very interesting. Check it out.
Thank you, Giacomo, for taking my role as moderator.
I thought I was the moderator.
No, but we can co-moderate. It's good.
No. Okay. Hi, I'm Giacomo Zucca. My project is no.
This is about collaboration, no?
I realized I never told you, Giacomo, that you was.
I swear there is an email that asks me that. It's okay.
Yeah, so my name's Joshua Shigala. Back in the early 90s, I was working on one of the first swap sites. I was always interested in alternative economies. So how do people swap instead of using money? And I realized that swapping is a really crap way of commerce, because if you have a T-shirt I really love and you don't like anything of mine, the deal falls through. I was thinking, but we've got a whole marketplace here of people swapping. We could make a digital token or some sort of money. And then I realized, but then I'll be the central banker, because how do I create this money? How do I? And so I was really trying to find solutions to digital money without me creating it, and looking at what the cypherpunks and reading what they were doing, but also just looking around the internet. Of course, it didn't solve the problem, so I dropped this, thought it was unsolvable, and then later in early 2011 or late 2010, somewhere around there, Satoshi's white paper came across my table, and I thought, shit, she solved the problem. And then I've been falling down that hole forever, but then I lost a lot of money in Mt. Gox. Damn it. And so that really inspired me to build a transparency protocol for exchanges, and inspired me to build an exchange where the counter asset isn't USD, isn't fiat, because I got into crypto to get away from fiat, but is gold. So people could trade into gold and back out into Bitcoin whenever they needed, and keep trading that with fully insured and fully audited vaults. So yeah, that's what we do.
So, moderator, moderate me.
Well, Giacomo, tell me about your experience in the in the space. And
So I'm doing, since 2013, I'm doing full-time Bitcoin consultancy, mostly to financial incumbents, so banks and stuff like that, especially in Switzerland. Previously, especially in Italy and Switzerland, now mostly in Switzerland. And on the side, I use the profits of this consultancy mostly to help boost, coordinate, push free non-profit open source development on Bitcoin. So usually I sponsor conferences or meetups and software projects. Recently, this second part of the effort is converging into DB structure with other friends like Alena and others, and we are moving the non-profit part there. For the rest of my time, I do consultancy.
Perfect, amazing. So yeah, we share. I introduce myself. I'm Diego Gutierrez. I'm also have been for 6 years building communities in Latin America, and we share with Giacomo that interest to see communities thrive around Bitcoin and these technologies. And also, I founded 2 companies. Coibank is looking to create platforms based on blockchain technologies for financial inclusion and other topics, and RSK, that is the first smart contract platform secured by the Bitcoin network with other 4 founders. So yeah, I think this technology will change it all, but we need to build it to get there. So, so this is about payment channels, no? So first of all, what is a payment channel? No, because I think our audience has different degrees of understanding. So who wants to take the hit on that one? And
Okay, I can take it. From a not so technical perspective, payment channel, you can see like on-chain payments, like a regular payment in the Bitcoin network or other crypto networks, as a settlement between 2 parties in front of a judge, right? So if you think of the blockchain as a judicial system, then for each transaction between 2 parties, you go directly to the judge. And payment channels are this idea of like if you have a contract between 2 parties, then you don't need to go in front of a judge most times. If both parties agree that the payment occurred and everyone agrees on the amount, then and that's fine, and the payment, like they can agree that the payment happened. And in case someone actually disagrees, then they can go in front of a judge and resolve the conflict, but most times you don't need to. And so payment channels are this idea of using the blockchain as an efficient settlement layer in case there's a conflict between parties, but avoiding it to avoid its inefficiencies most of the time.
perfect. It's like, in a way, is another way of putting it is like when you have money on the bank and you issue a check until the check is cashed out. It's a promise of payment based on funds that are already locked and under the custody of, in this case, of a smart contract instead of an entity. So you can issue a lot of checks. That's very easy to do. It's only paper. But, settling is more expensive because we know blockchain settlement is more expensive.
Just a very quick comment I will do on that is that promise of payment usually is a term that Lightning developers and payment channel developers don't like very much because it entails a lot of trust in the counterparty risk. While Lightning itself is a valid Bitcoin transaction that you can cash out eventually, and so it's not really a promise. It's more like a prepared payment that eventually you can cash out, or a promise made by a kind of infallible counterparty.
Yes, that's a very good point, because I think, well, that takes me to this following question. Maybe you can is that why payment channels? Why don't we scale everything on the blockchain? That's Satoshi's vision. I'm sorry, I'm kidding.
Tough one.
Was it? No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really annoying if you go to a bar and have to pay every time you pay for a drink. It's much better to have a tab with the barman and be able to settle at the end of the night. But the biggest problem I saw is that there's only 7 transactions per second. So there's no possible way without making absolutely enormous block size limit to have it as a mainstream payment option. And that's all that we want, is that there's a mainstream payment option.
Yeah. If I may, another quick comment.
Yes, please.
It's a little bit, I agree, it's even worse than paying directly with cash at the bar with every beer. Paying every beer adds friction, so you want that tab, but at least the cash payment, after you have done it with some friction, disappears. So it's a system of local consensus. You agree with the bartender that the cash is now in his hand, and that's finished. Bitcoin is not like that. Bitcoin is a global consensus system. That means that every time you pay on the blockchain, every single node of Bitcoin that will ever synchronize to the network will have to store, download, verify, and eventually store for broadcasting that transaction forever. So it's not like cash where you pay and that situation is just like teardrops in the rain, disappear in history. No, global consensus means that everybody must keep track of every state change forever. And Satoshi, and especially Alfini, was well aware of this problem of global consensus, and not during the publication of the white paper, but like in the months immediately after, they started to discuss how can we avoid to abuse this global consensus, which is by definition super expensive. So Satoshi's vision was readily changed into something that took into account this problem.
So, so you think Alfini was Satoshi, or very close to it?
I actually
That's what
don't.
you're saying.
They were both right about, or not right in that sense. They were both right in this sense.
But I think like nano payments as well are really important, and really tiny payments. These are something that's missing from the internet up to now. And being able to pay per word or per paragraph or per article and is kneading down to the cent. So even sub-satoshis, which are available through payment channels.
Yes, I think I was going in that direction with the following questions, because I think at the end this is about scaling, and scaling translates into cost. You know, so how Giacomo was saying, I mean, this consensus, this synchronization of the nodes, of having like thousands or tens of thousands of servers storing the same data, comes with a cost. And that's a realization that over the years, in the beginning, in the early days of Bitcoin, we were using Bitcoin even to post images of our kids. So it was crazy because it was so cheap. But there were a couple people, getting mad when you did that. But conceptually, now that we really are using the Bitcoin blockchain a lot, you realize that, you have to be careful or at least aware about the cost of that, no? So, and the other thing that is a good question, the one good thing that you mentioned is that why you want your Starbucks coffee to be there for the future of humanity? I mean, do we really need to settle in an immutable ledger every action we do in our lives? No, it's also a question of purpose. As we understand more, because so far we were saying, blockchain is a solution, but what was the problem? We were not questioning which problem we were solving, and now that we are starting to question which problem we are solving, we will use the right tool. No, so I think payment channels has to do with that. It's like you don't want every transaction in your life to be recorded for the future of humanity.
Yeah, I agree. I think what Bitcoin really solved, the problem that it solved, was that money was created out of debt. With interest that doesn't exist. So Bitcoin was a rare number found into existence and spent into existence instead of conjured into thin air and lent into existence with interest. So having money based on a real rare asset instead of some strange thing that's conjured into air without any sort of scarcity is really what it solved. And now the layer 2 is the coffee problem.
Also, you say the cost. It comes from a cost. The cost is not just paying high fees or waiting a lot of time for confirmation. The cost is also privacy. As you said, people will have the information about my coffee purchase forever. That means that maybe with the forensics analysis tool of 2050, they will be analyzing my coffee transaction right now. So it's also a huge privacy cost to hit the blockchain every time.
Exactly, and coffee, it's more or less okay, but there are other things we don't want to leave there.
Corrected coffee, like
okay.
Coffee plus.
Coffee plus. So
yeah, but
if you go to Amsterdam, for example.
But it's also, privacy is not just legal things. If I'm running a business and I don't want my customers to know where I source my goods from or how much extra I charge for them or my markup is, or how much my employees are all getting paid or whatever, it's just a general normal thing.
Or a security thing. If I don't want my stalker to be able to kidnap me and store me some money, illegal or legal stalkers.
So far we have that, these payment channels are scaling solutions. By consequence, they also lower the transactional cost because you can split. You only need one transaction on chain to open a channel, then you need another one to close it or replenish it. And so if you can, compact or cram maybe 100 transactions, then that means that you will pay 1/50 of the cost per transaction. So they are scaling and also economical solutions. But let's talk of the bad things. I mean, why, if we have these, then forget about blockchain. Let's stop talking about blockchain. Why don't we go just fully into these payment channels? I mean, what are the challenges for this technology to evolve, or what are the vectors of attack of this technology?
I think you're the most qualified.
Sure. So on the one hand, so the economic model for payment channels is a little bit different from on-chain payments. Like, you're going to have to pay fees that may be even proportional to the amounts you are sending due to different operations that the intermediate nodes have to do. Like, the intermediate nodes, for example, have to provide liquidity for users to be able to route payments. And so if you want to send a really big payment through the Lightning Network, then all the intermediate nodes need to provide liquidity and that amount of liquidity.
So basically, if I want, I don't know, to pay 100 Bitcoins, and I'm connected to a node, and that node is connected to another node, both nodes need 100 Bitcoin in
each
stake.
node in the path, except for the last one, needs to have 100 bitcoins like staked in their channel.
So that on one side creates, well, somebody has to be willing to do that. I imagine nodes that do that will charge for it, but also it impose some certain risk for those nodes because they have a lot of funds at stake exposed there, no?
Yeah, so you also have that point where to operate a node, like, the security model is really tough. It's even tougher than exchanges because exchanges have the advantage that because they don't need all their funds at any given point in time, they can move it to cold storage. In Lightning Network, to have your money staked in channels, you need to have it hot. And so it's a huge security risk, it's a huge operational risk. And so there's a lot of cost for intermediate nodes. And that's probably going to make Lightning a viable solution for small payments, but not for really large payments.
And are there some technologies or solutions that mitigate that problem?
Really large payments?
No,
yeah,
like
blockchain.
distributing the risk between nodes. I know the answer, but yeah, I just want to say.
I think it's splitting up those and fragmenting those. Yeah. So if you need a 100 Bitcoin transaction, A, you would probably do it on-chain, but B, if you really wanted to do it off-chain in a second layer solution, it would split up into 1,000 transactions, send it through many, many channels, and reconvene into the final position.
And I think that in Lightning is already on the works, no?
Yeah. It's called EMP, atomic multipath, because you make the payment once, atomic, it happens or doesn't, but you create different paths that reunites to the recipient.
They converge.
Very
so there are already solutions on the works for this. And that also will create a network with more nodes, so a more healthy network, no, in a way.
Also, it improves the privacy, because if every channel changes the liquidity in an important way, they will have to signal the change of liquidity, otherwise the payment routing through them will fail. So that they will have to update their state to the network, which is a privacy leak. While if you spread your payment around, every channel will change the liquidity just a little bit, the balance just a little bit, so you don't need to advertise publicly that you changed the relative balance. So EMP is a huge privacy improvement.
Amazing. And I heard about it also that there's a problem with this symmetry on the payment channels. Somehow, channels so far are like unidirectional. They go in one direction. But what happens if I want to exchange value with parties back and forth? I mean,
technically speaking, they are bidirectional.
Yeah,
the problem is that the economic habits of users could be monodirectional.
Yeah, so right now channels, at least in Lightning Network, are bidirectional. The only thing in the first version of Lightning, there was a restriction where only one party could fund it initially, but that's changing pretty soon.
So that's another problem to solve. It's like who can fund the channel.
Yeah, exactly. So you need an initial funder, and that's probably going to be a problem, at least at the beginning when we start migrating from fully on-chain payments to off-chain payments.
Why is that a problem? Why the single funding is a problem?
So you need to bootstrap the network, right? And so opening channels is expensive because you have to pay an on-chain transaction. And so it's not clear now who's going to pay for this. Like, for example, are wallets going to front this in order to have users send payments through the Lightning Network, or is every user going to open their channels and just take care of that? So, like, the Lightning Network brings several usability questions, especially for wallets. Because the model is so different to on-chain transactions, and you probably, as a wallet, you don't want to move all this complexity to the user. You want to abstract it away, but to do that, today it's a really tough technical problem. Actually, in Moon, we're working on that, and we've been doing research for quite a while. And we still even don't have all the technology we need. Like, there are several features missing from Lightning right now that are pretty important to do that.
Okay, so that's an open question yet. It's not solved.
Yeah.
But I emphasize these things because it's interesting to know how far we got, but also that there's open questions yet, and we are still working on the technology to make this work. And I mean, that triggers, and I think there's other two topics that I want to touch. One is privacy, as Suko mentioned. It's like, Giacomo, I can call you both, yes, but then we get confusions with the other Suko.
It's a zero knowledge thing. Nobody knows which one is
You don't
one.
know which one. It's good. You can have
Privacy.
two pre-images. Yeah,
It's an unlimited set of Zukos at the conferences too.
So I think there's another problem that is that, if I establish a channel, then somebody can see my IP, and then they can attack my IP because they see I established that channel. So, I mean, and in that sense, Bitcoin has this feature where, my IP is never, I mean, you could have nodes eavesdropping where transactions are listened first, but it's probabilistic location or geolocation, but it's not like a certain geolocation. Here, as I'm establishing a channel with the node directly, the channel knows my IP. So what about that? I mean, it's not Lightning giving us, or payment channels giving us into the hands of the big brother and the banks?
That's actually a good point. So Lightning improves privacy from at the money level, but decreases the privacy at the network level for that reason. I think that, I mean, I don't know if everybody is working on something about that.
So you can actually open channels through the Tor network, and that would probably be enough to hide your IP address. But yeah, so at least like the channel, like the nodes you're connected to know a lot about you, at least like what payments you're making and what amounts you're sending. And AMP is also a really good technology for that, because like you can split your payments into many smaller payments, and so each node you are connected to will only see a part of your payment and won't know the recipient. So I think it's a better privacy model than the blockchain, where your transactions are recorded for posterity, and as you said, like 50 years from now, maybe we have some technology that allows to backtrack those transactions.
And also, I think there are some people working on onion routing.
Yeah, for sure. It's possible right now.
Basically, when you move a packet to the next node, then that gets encrypted, and only the next node and the previous node are known.
It's already like that. Everything is already onion routed. So if I have to pay you through them, he will know that it's coming from me, but not where it originates. Maybe not by me. And it does know that it goes to him, but not if it's end there or goes on.
So each node knows the previous node and the following node, but they don't know the full path.
Yeah, exactly.
So that provides, as we have more intermediary nodes, that creates more privacy as well.
So today everybody could fire a Lightning node in production over Tor like an
I
Italy
believe
service.
so, yeah. At least in L&D, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you can also have mixing very cheaply within Lightning Network. So, yeah, that also adds a massive layer of privacy.
Mixing, for those who don't know, is basically if I send some money and he sends some money and he sends some money, you know, our payments are scrambled and, you know, they reach other destinations of equal amount as the intended amount, but it's not a direct connection between the original or the intended recipient and destination and sender. So you scramble the sender and recipient relationships.
Yeah, it's more about obfuscating the time when things happen, because that's what's really because like you said earlier, you don't know what's happening next. But if someone's watching the network, they can see, oh, that channel got, you know, this channel released this many funds and that channel got that many funds, so they don't care what happened in the middle. But if you can trickle slowly, then that also becomes more private.
And another thing that I heard is like, you know, while I do this, well, I keep using the promise of payment, but it's like this absolutely, you know, infallible proof of payment or promise of payments that is like in each step of the channel, I'm committing to more and more funds. So what happens if I try to cheat on the network and let's say that out of a channel of 1 Bitcoin, I spent already 80 cents, but I have a promise or a check for 20 cents, and I try to go to the chain and say, no, I only spent 20 to be able to get the other 60s. What happens there? What happens if the counterparty is not there present? I mean, how because otherwise I should be online, you know, checking the payment channels to avoid somebody from cheating on me, you know, to avoid, because if I'm on the other side and I'm expecting to get the 80 cents and the other one tried to pay only 20 and I'm not online, I cannot do anything to fix that. So how we protect that without being online all the time?
So right now you have to be online. That's the current state of things. But there's a proposal called watchtowers where you can pay third parties to actually watch for you, and it aligns incentives in the right way so that you can go offline and be sure that someone is watching for you. And probably every Lightning node is going to be also watchtower, at least at the beginning. So
that would be like an additional service that nodes will provide for others, like saying, okay, if you are not online, I can watch it for you. If somebody tries to cheat on the channel, I will protect you. And
yeah. In the last summit, like 3 weeks ago, they decided that they will probably integrate it in the node, and so you can be sure that there's always going to be a watcher available.
And also, I think in these watchtowers, there's mechanism also to protect your privacy, where you tell them only a little of information about the channel they need to monitor, and you leave them encrypted, the information to counterattack, you know, the attacker, but not open, so they cannot follow which transactions are yours, but they can act once the attack is triggered. No, so that's an interesting concept as well.
Also, there is a new proposal called L2, ELTOOO, which is a mockery of L2, layer 2. This proposal changes the security model. Right now, the security model is a punishment. So if you try to broadcast a null invalid state and I catch you, I can punish you taking all the money. While L2 changes that model to a validity model, not quite secure as Bitcoin on chain, but more similar, in which basically you can get out with a state which is invalid, but if I have a state which is with a state which is more recent, I can spend your money. So I can. It makes. This L2 proposal makes a lot of things better, but especially the mechanism to punish cheaters becomes way more simpler without what cryptographers call cryptographic toxic wastes. So right now with a Lightning wallet, I have to store every single channel update. So every time we transact on Lightning, I have to store that. And if I give you that, you can damage me. And if I lose that, I can be at your mercy. With L2, instead, you just have to keep the last one, and you can also publish that on I don't know, on a pass bin, and it doesn't matter because it's not a toxic waste.
Yes.
Of course, you need a consensus change, a soft fork, to introduce a new code called new way of signing, which may take, as we know, time.
Yeah, time. And also, the interesting thing is that sometimes cheaters are not cheaters because they want to, but it might be a failure in the software, so you don't want to be so harsh on the cheater because it was an unintentional cheater. You know, I know friends that are like that. They don't intend to be cheaters. And okay.
That's what cheaters say.
So I'm wrapping up because time is off. But you mentioned L2, and I will challenge that because for RSK that's L3, because in the conception of RSK, Bitcoin is L1, RSK is L2, and off-chain payments is L3. And one other thing that I wanted to mention is that these off-chain payment systems are also being ported to other blockchains aside from Bitcoin. We focus on Lightning because it's the more advanced in the process, but I think it applies, the same concepts apply to any off-chain payment system. Raiden is in Ethereum, Lumino will be launched
But not just that, even
RSK.
for side chains, you have RSK or Liquid. The peg-in and peg-out processes are very slow by design,
Yes.
because they have to be slow. So Lightning between Liquid and Bitcoin, or Rootstock and Bitcoin,
Yes.
is also helping for peg-in and peg-out.
Absolutely, and I've been talking with the Lightning Labs team also to work on that, to do like a dual node of Lumino and Lightning and do instant swaps of smart Bitcoins. And
Okay.
okay, so but I think we did, it
Good
was
job.
a complex
Yes, yes.
topic. We tried to cover everything. So
Okay, it was a
thank
very
you.
good talk.
Thank you very much.